A guten Erev Shabbos to everyone. Parshas ve'eschanan, Shabbos Nachamu. I wish everyone a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos. I just wanted to share one thought with everyone. I mean, I can't be the only one that experienced this, but I was a bit disappointed this morning. I was expecting to wake up with a number of WhatsApp notifications on my phone, with a number of emails, all screaming, Mashiach is here. Finally, the Geula is taking place. The final redemption is happening. I was expecting those messages on my phone because yesterday's Tisha B'Av was such a moving day. It was a day of introspection, of giving us some clarity of what's truly important in life, why we desire the Beis Hamikdash so much. And I figured that all of Klal Yisrael spending their time focused on that rebuilding, that it has to amount to something. So I have to say, I was a little disappointed that I woke up without those notifications, without hearing the sound of the shofar's big blast that Mashiach is finally here. And that's exactly what this Shabbos is dedicated for, to comfort people like me and like you that are still in this deep gullus, and we just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's very difficult to be able to find the right perspective in order so that we can find the comfort and be able to finally, in Mirza Hashem, have Mashiach Tzidkenu. And it's a difficult thing, but you know what? We have to find the comfort. So where do we find the comfort? And so the Navi, at the beginning of this week's Haftorah, where the name of the Parsha comes from, gives us already, right in that opening line of Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, gives us the key to finding the comfort. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, be comforted, my people. Then says the end of the pasuk, Yomar Elokeichem, is what God says. I think there's something very powerful and profound here. That the Nachama, the comfort, comes from the fact that it's Yomar Elokeichem, comes from the fact that it all ultimately comes from God. That the reason why we're stuck in the Galus is because ultimately it's part of God's plan. It's part of God's plan that there are tragedies that happen in the world, that there are difficulties that take place, that there are difficulties that I have in my personal life, there are difficulties that you have in your personal lives, there are difficulties that we face as a community, as a Jewish people as a whole, and as the world at large. There are difficulties that happen, but we have to understand that it's all Yomar Elokeichem. It all ultimately comes from God, and that in of itself is the greatest nechama. That in of itself is the greatest comfort, as the Gemara tells us in Maseches Brachos on Daf Samech, that Rabbi Akiva said that Kol man da'avid Rachmana l'tavhu da'avid, that everything that comes from God, a person's perspective needs to be that it ultimately comes from God and it's ultimately for the good. With that perspective, we can begin to have the comfort because we know that it's all part of God's master plan. When a tragedy occurs, the Mishnah tells us that we make the bracha of Baruch Dayan Ha'emes. How does one make a blessing when there's a tragedy? Because you're making a declaration that Hashem is the Dayan Ha'emes. He's the true king. He has the master plan. He's the true judge. And as the one who has the master plan, Baruch Hashem, I can put my faith in knowing, even though I don't completely understand it, that it ultimately comes from God. With this perspective, it can even change the way that we daven. Because so often we daven with a sense of entitlement. Like, God, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that, and that, and that, and that. And it's kind of like, God, here are all the things I need. You better give them to me because for whatever reason, I think I deserve them. But we find that the way that tzaddikim daven is with this kind of a perspective, that an understanding that God has a plan, God gave me everything I need because it's everything that I truly do need. And the way I daven needs to come from a place of humility, a place of, I know that ultimately, God, you're going to give me everything I need. But maybe I can have a little bit extra like this. Maybe if it's, I know I don't deserve it, but maybe you can give me just a little bit more. We find that this is the way that Moshe Rabbeinu davens in the beginning of Parshas Ve'eschanan. The Torah tells us Ve'eschanan el Adonai be'es ha'yilamor, that Moshe Rabbeinu is beseeching, he's giving supplication, he's davening to God at this moment, in order so that he can join his people, he can join the Jewish people in sojourning into Eretz Yisrael, into the Holy Land, into the Promised Land. And even though Moshe Rabbeinu was already told by God that, no, you have to stay back, you will not be able to enter the land, Moshe Rabbeinu is asking God, he's beseeching God, Ve'eschanan el Adonai be'es ha'yilamor, to let him go with the Jewish people into the land of Israel. And Rashi tells us, what's with this language of Ve'eschanan? If Moshe Rabbeinu is davening, it should have used the more colloquial term of Ve'espalel, that Moshe Rabbeinu was davening. Why does it say ve'eschanan el Adonai be'esai lemor? That Moshe Rabbeinu was giving supplication. What's this language of ve'eschanan? So Rashi tells us ve'eschanan comes from the root the following. It says Rashi, ein chinon b'chol makom ella. What's this language of ve'eschanan? Lashon matnas chinam. As a bonus. Completely a bonus. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to God, I know that this is not in the plans. I know that you have an ultimate master plan, and for whatever reason, you're deeming it for me to stay outside the land of Israel. But would it be okay if I joined them anyway? Would it be okay if I went ahead with them? A place of humility, knowing that it's completely bonus, it's extra, because we know that Hashem has an ultimate plan. Rashi continues and he says, even though Moshe Rabbeinu could have listed the infinite amount of unbelievably good and positive things that Moshe Rabbeinu contributed to this world, an endless amount of things. Moshe Rabbeinu is the greatest Navi, the greatest prophet that ever was and ever will be in the history of the Jewish people. He could have listed a number of different reasons why he deserves to go into the land of Israel. But instead, he chose to take the position of Hashem, you know what is best. I'm asking you for a bonus. With this perspective of knowing that Hashem has a master and ultimate plan, that in and of itself is what brings us the comfort. It's what brings us the comfort to know that I can continue to try and be my best, to try and lift up others around me, in order so we can go closer to Hashem. And whatever happens, happens. Because ultimately, I know that it all comes from Avinu Sh'Bashamayim, our Father in heaven. This is our parent that's calling the shots. No one loves us more. And that in and of itself is the ultimate comfort that we could have. I wish everyone a beautiful and wonderful Shabbos. As the Torah tells us that this is the purpose of Shabbos, to contemplate these things. As the Torah says, L'man ladas ki ani Hashem mekadshtem. The whole purpose of Shabbos is to know that Hashem is the one in the driver's seat. To know that Hashem, our Avinu Sh'Bashamayim, the one that loves us most in the world, is the one that made the Jewish people holy and is setting up this beautiful and master plan for us. A beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Shabbos to everyone. Take care. Shabbat Shalom.